Muy buenas tardes. Es para nosotros un gusto enorme, como saben, un privilegio contar con la visita de un actor extraordinario al que hemos admirado todos muchísimos años. Ha hecho más de 100 películas. Él es un hombre de una gran inteligencia, sensibilidad, carisma, talento. Y bueno, ha accedido a tener una plática. Estamos muy contentos que haya tanta gente que lo quiera escuchar y que haya tanto público tan ávido y que quiera reunirse con nosotros el día de hoy a escuchar esta conversación que Willem Dafoe tendrá con el crítico Nick Roddick de la revista Sight and Sound. Será una conversación muy íntima, donde platicarán de varios aspectos de su carrera. Y bueno, para empezar, tendremos alguna pequeña presentación de la carrera de este realmente extraordinario actor y una magnífica persona además. Así que estamos muy contentos de tener esta presentación, además con un amigo muy querido también de Willem que está aquí, Chema Prado. Muchas gracias por venir. Muchas gracias. Y una gran cineasta, Yada Colagrande. Muchas gracias por estar presentes. Así que, bueno, vamos a ver la presentación y decirles que es un gusto, de veras un honor, y que esperamos que regrese Yada pronto con su próxima película. La esperamos con mucha ansia. Yada, your next film, here, in Morelia. Okay. Oh. Okay. Y bueno, pues vamos a dar inicio a esta presentación. Gracias.
What you sang?
You have no choice, neither do I. We're bringing God and man together.
Flashing. What's up? Watch your finger! Blood!
I'm gonna bag Rick Masters.
If he is.
We got a chance to make him on a hand-to-hand buy.
You can't come up with the front money. You're not for real.
You're not the first agents to get next to Masters.
You're not wired, are you?
Oh, you lie! I'm coming down!
Okay, I was going to say, Willem, welcome to Mexico, but I think that did it for you.
Thank you.
It's a fantastic honor to be here. Before we came on stage today, I did a little maths to try and work out how many films you'd made. And I figured out if we spent 5 minutes talking about everyone that you'd made or your voice had appeared in, we would be here until 9:40 tonight. And that, of course, would completely scupper the plans for my friend Adrian Wooten's Shakespeare show later on, which I hope you'll attend. We're just the warm-up. I'm going to talk or put questions to Willem for a little while, and then obviously what this is about is you talking to him, so we'll hand the microphone over to you and you can put questions. But just to do some very basics, you're born in Wisconsin, which is a very traditional calm, not to say conservative state. How
Tends
did
to
you
be.
end up in a profession as unreliable as acting?
I think, looking back, I was performing when I was a young kid. I came from a large family, and I always look back and think that it was very difficult to find your own identity in a family of 8 children. So I think my way was to be the clown. That was my survival in this pack of kids, and 2 parents that worked. So it was quite a chaotic group. And it started out as a love of performing, just as an extension of a social thing. And I never really trained that much. I really trained by doing. I just never decided on being an actor. I just gravitated towards situations and people. And then after a certain amount of time, I said, well, I guess I'm an actor.
And what was the first time you were actually paid for being an actor?
First time I was paid for being an actor, I was probably 13 years old, but it was a community theater. It was a local, semi-professional theater.
Yeah.
Paid very little,
And then New York, you spent how long on the stage in New York?
Well, I had a company called the Wooster Group in New York for basically 27 years, and it continues, and that was my day-to-day life. That was my factory. That was my life, and then occasionally they'd allow me to sneak off and make a movie now and then.
How did you first come to sneak off to make a movie? How did that happen?
Someone came and saw me in a theater show in New York City, and they asked me to be in this movie. And if you follow cinema, it, interestingly enough, was the first film of Catherine Bigelow, a very small film called The Loveless. And she said, do you want to do this thing? And I thought, my identity was totally being a theater actor.
Yeah.
And I said yes, and I loved it immediately. I loved that relationship with the camera. I loved the pace of working, certain kind of rituals, how the mysteriousness of being on a set.
You had actually had a previous film employment. I think I can ask you this because it's been mentioned elsewhere. You worked on Heaven's Gate and you were fired?
Yes, I was fired, and as you see, I don't really count that because I was actually kind of like a glorified extra. And but when I got there, I started working all the time. Heaven's Gate was a film that was, the first day, we were 7 days behind because we created so much new material each day that new narratives were created all the time. So when the studio that was financing the movie saw it going out of control, budget-wise, there was a crackdown. The director was very tense, and one day we were doing a lighting setup. Someone told me a joke, and I laughed. And he turned around, and I think he felt humiliated kind of abstractly by this extra, this small part actor laughing. He was paranoid enough by that time, I think, that he turned around and he said, "Willem, step out." And everybody, the sea parted, and I went back to my hotel room, and some lowly employee came and said, "You're finished." I said, "What happened?" And he said, "That's it, you're finished."
So your career almost ended before it started?
That's right.
Okay, so what would you say was the first film that you did that really began to open doors for you, that you would then be able to work?
Well, I always feel like one thing leads to the next. Loveless was important because, as I said, my identity was a theater actor. I wasn't soliciting work. So what that film did is it interested a representative that saw me, called me up because I was in the New York City phone book in those days, and called me up and said, "Would you like to do, I thought, there was something there in this movie. Would you like to do more movies?" And I said, "Sure." Yeah. So that was the beginning of starting to solicit work. So that was important. But I'd say the most important film at the beginning was probably To Live and Die in L.A., because it caught the interest of directors that cast me later in films, most notably Oliver Stone and Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, I mean, you've worked with Paul Schrader, Martin Scorsese, Oliver Stone, and several directors whose names don't begin with S, hundreds of them, in fact. For you, is that the important thing when you choose a role?
It is. I mean, I believe in a cinema that comes from one voice, an author cinema. And so I'm very attracted to strong directors with a very particular take on how to work and what kind of films they want to make. And you find that less so in the industry and more so on the outside, on the edges of the industry. But I just like, I think people are very important to me, and the director should lead the team, that's all.
You've played an extraordinary range of characters, from the most saintly possible, from Jesus of Nazareth, or indeed the character in Platoon is the nicest character and therefore dies the soonest. And then to the other end of the spectrum, there's the Green Goblin, there's Mad Dog, which is possibly the most unpleasant character I've ever seen.
In a while.
There's a new movie called Dog Eat Dog, written and directed by Paul Schrader. And indeed, Vampires,
right.
The clip we saw earlier on where you played Max Schreck. But people often say you tend to be cast as the bad guy. Does that?
That's the perception, I think, because in the movies that get bigger releases, that tend to be more studio movies, they tend to be, just generally, because there's a tendency to have to calculate what the thing is that you're making, they tend to go with what we've seen before and what worked before. So the way I feel about it, if I look at my filmography, I play as many good guys as bad guys. In fact, I don't even categorize them as that. I think at the beginning of my career, maybe I had some worry about typecasting, but that's kind of left me.
I'd kind of qualify the bad guy thing. It seems to me that the character that you play most often is someone who is alone.
Alone.
I can't think of a film that you've made where you're in a happily married situation.
Why do we want to tell those stories? They kind of take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, what I find most attractive and most romantic are the stories that come from the edge and talk about worlds or experiences that I don't know. That's one of the pleasures of being an actor, going towards someone else's experience and reaching some sort of understanding or inhabiting it in a way that challenges how you think, how you see, and transforms you. That's the pleasure. So I'm a pretty stable guy. I have a charmed life, So to activate, to make something, I'm much more drawn to a certain kind of chaos and danger and adventure.
How do you prepare for a role? I mean, let's say you were cast in a remake of Barfly. Would you read Bukowski a lot? Would you go to cheap bars a lot?
I think it really, it's always different, and you're not only the character is different, but your role, your position in the movie is always different. Your relationship with the director is always different. You have to calculate all those things. I always feel like you do as much research or reading or exploring different looks or strange costumes. You do that when you feel the need. You need the authority to pretend. Yeah. And you either do that by researching and learning something that has a level of engagement where you become that guy, or you're approximating as much as you can his thought processes. A beautiful example it was in Pasolini. There's a wealth of material. He was a prolific writer, film director, critic. There was so much to read. Or T.S. Eliot, so much to read, and then so much biographical information. So it becomes kind of a flirtation with the ghost, because you can take their ideas and words, take them on, you invite them to affect you, and then also you have all this historical information that helps you with the pretending. So sometimes a lot of research, sometimes little. Something like Bobby Peru in Wild at Heart, if you know that film, no research at all. I had a beautiful costume. I had kind of like a fantasy about who this guy was, and I didn't waste a moment thinking about it before I actually started to shoot.
The phrase you use there, which I'm going to treasure, which is the authority to pretend.
Okay.
Is that what characterizes you? I mean, it seems to me that you're very much the professional actor. You take a part, you work at it, you deliver it, you put yourself into it as much or as little as needs be. But that authority to pretend is part of your professional credo, is that?
I think so, because, you know, there's all kinds of movies, there's all kinds of performances. Some are more theatrical, some are more natural, some are more distant, some are very close to you. But you're always pretending. That is, you're inviting to be transformed. You're inviting to lose yourself in something, in the other, or another thing. Yeah. You're always going towards something. And I love that feeling, and that's why performing never gets old to me, and that's why I still believe in the power of movies.
You mentioned Pasolini. There is a very strange overlap there with with the Scorsese movie, with The Temptation of Christ, The Last Temptation, because Pasolini made an excellent movie about Christ, The Gospel According to St. Matthew, which I think it's perhaps even a model for certain bits of your performance. Is that?
This is very true. When I was making Last Temptation of Christ, Martin Scorsese said basically nothing to me except for, as far as guiding how I should prepare. He gave me a little archaeological thing about crucifixion, like 3 pages from some scholarly journal, and he said, see Gospel According to Matthew, the Pasolini film, because he said this is more what we're doing than the traditional biblical movie. And that was very important. And I knew that may have been the first, no, maybe I don't know. That may have been the first Pasolini film I saw.
The Last Temptation of Christ was in competition in Venice, I think, and you had I always swear I'll never do this, but when we were talking last night, you said about Sergio Leone.
No, we were talking last night, and Last Temptation of Christ premiered at Venice Film Festival, and they knew there might be some problems because of the content of it, because there was a history. I didn't think there would be, because it seemed like a very devout religious movie and very considered. It wasn't really transgressive, it was very thoughtful. But anyway, we're releasing this movie, and it opens, and there was a lot of political posturing. I remember Zeffirelli came out against it, said this is an abomination. And a director that I admired his work broke my heart when all over the Italian papers it says, Sergio Leone has seen this film, and he says, I don't know what to think about it, because this, speaking about me, this is not the face of our Lord. This is the face of a criminal. I got hurt feelings.
Do you work with the director a lot when you're preparing? I mean, we talked about the preparation that you go off and do on your own. Do you have long sessions, or does it vary?
Some people, yes, some people, no. I mean, someone like Abel Ferrara, I work very closely with him now, where, you know, we finish each other's sentences, we know who does what, it's real, like we're one person sometimes. I've worked with Paul Schrader, a director, 7 times. He very rarely says anything to me. In fact, when I was making this film, Light Sleeper, which was the first important film for me that I made with him, I remember halfway through the shooting, I thought, God, this guy doesn't say anything to me, you know? But I didn't feel lost, because the script was so good and he gave me a beautiful setup and I felt comfortable. And then that very day that I said it, later in the day he said, listen, I don't say much to you, but it's going fine. So
It's a very gentle movie in the end, the Pasolini. And Abel Ferrara is a somewhat volatile character.
It's
you
true.
are noted for quite strong performances, but you seem to be the most lost of all the characters you played as you try to find yourself towards the end of Pasolini.
Well, I think he was very disillusioned. You know, you look at how he wrote at the beginning of his career to what he was writing about at the end. He was very pessimistic and really was kind of, felt very dark about the future and about what was at work on that society and our society, taking our humanity away. I must say that if you see Pasolini, which we'll screen later today, there's an interview, his last interview, that we take a lot of that interview and sort of restage it in the film. And so much of what he says resonates with me now and really speaks to this new age of technology and also just global village. The downside of those things.
We've kind of drifted into Europe. Let's just go back to Hollywood for a moment.
Okay, do we have to?
Just for a few seconds. Presumably working on something like Spider-Man is totally unlike anything else that you do. Is it just a question of looking at marks on the floor and...
Yeah, but I like structure, and I'm basically, I always think of myself as a dancer. I always think of myself as a task-oriented actor. So I love marks on the floor.
Yeah.
I love structure, because if you have a strong structure, it frees you to inhabit. It allows you all the energy to inhabit. Really, my strongest experiences always happen when I submit to a structure or I submit to an idea, and I surprise myself, because if you're controlling too much, you're only going to reinforce what you already know, and a little part of you will die each time.
That would be another word I would suggest that you remember, structure, because the number of directors I've interviewed who have said that is the most important thing to them. Question, do you think it's possible to have a really good performance in a really bad movie?
No. You can admire it, the whole point is the performance is supposed to serve the movie. And there can be some pleasure in watching a very present performance or a skilled performance, but if it doesn't serve the movie, it becomes a talent show, And the highest performances for me are the ones that absolutely serve the movie, and you don't know what is the performer, you don't know what is the actor, you don't know what is the character, the writing, the director. It's all one package, and you can't even imagine who did what.
I mentioned the H word, and we went there briefly, Hollywood, but you now divide your time between New York and Rome.
That's correct.
And you've worked a great deal with European directors in the last decade and a half. Is that a very different experience?
It's all film. I mean, every experience is colored by where you're shooting and the crew. It's, the sensibilities are clearly different. I mean, they're as different as you can imagine, just cultural difference. A Hollywood guy with a baseball cap, and with his latte is very different than a guy that's, some French cinephile that's, has a book of poetry in his pocket. What can I say?
But some of the films, presumably, you are liable to end up being seen more at film festivals than they are in multiplexes.
It's true. It's true. And, film festivals are very important, because I think they keep the dialogue alive, and they also help some films that, if they were just thrown out in the marketplace, they would not be framed right, or you wouldn't get introduced to them in the right way. So let me be here to say hallelujah for this film festival. festivals that really function and aren't just, arms of the local tourism bureau.
Mexico. You've worked in Mexico, presumably.
I have 2 times, and I will work again in Mexico. Which I'm very happy about. I mean, I start next week.
Yeah, so you're about to start work on a film in Mexico.
Yes.
Can you tell us something about that? Because I haven't seen much in the way of announcements of it.
Well, I don't want to say too much. I think I can say where we're shooting. Excuse my pronunciation. Real de Catorce. Okay. Good. That's the way I feel. I'm eager to go there. It's a Mexican production. Piano is the producer, if you know that company. And it's an Australian director from a script that he wrote. And it's kind of useless to say anything about the story, but Spanish, it's in Spanish and English, Mexican actors. I speak English. But I speak Italian okay, and as soon as I get that under my belt, I promise you, Spanish is next.
Let's move even closer to home. Morelia. What has your experience here been?
With
Morelia.
Morelia. Listen. I hate to be, a Swede, and sing the praises while I'm right here, but it's true. The place is beautiful. The festival, the hospitality is incredible. Did a few tourist things, and it's just like researching a part. You learn things. It changes how you think, and I feel good here. And particularly the people around the festival are very sweet, and they love movies. So I'm very happy here.
Just one last question. You're an actor. Have you ever wanted to direct?
No.
Could you expand on that just a little bit? I mean, most actors do.
I was trying to discipline myself for once to have a short answer. But because I think about it a lot, and I'm asked that question a lot. I guess most simply, I'm a doer, not a watcher. And so much pleasure I get is, in trying to tap into the wisdom of the body, rather than, having an idea and seeing it realized. I like to be the idea. I like to be the thing. For me personally, that's satisfying, and I've found a profession, more or less each time it's different, but I've found a profession that I never get tired of. I'm always turned on, and I've got a lucky defect. I've got a bad memory in the sense that every time I come to do a movie, it's like, how do I do this? What is this? And that's a beautiful feeling. So imagine me being a director and coming to set and saying, how do I do this? What is this? Directors have to be more responsible. I like a little bit of irresponsibility.
Do you, your wife, whose movie is here, which screened the other night,
Padre,
and you also have had a certain amount of contact with performance art, Martina Abramovic in particular. Yes. Is that an area that particularly interests you? Are you a collector?
I'm not a collector, but I
collect performance art, of course.
I think as much as film, if not more, I get most inspired by either watching dance or going to a gallery. So, and then of course there's music too. But I'd say, no, I'm very, I just find that I'm always inspired by, particularly by going to galleries, if the work is, good. So I do have a connection to the art world.
Okay, I think that's it for me. I'm going to throw you to the wolves now.
Okay. How are we doing this? Are we doing this? Yeah. And you'll give me the translation. I promise you, one of these days, I'm not going to need this. Or at least I dream of that.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Yes, yes. Yes.
Tenemos la primera pregunta.
Well, first of all, I would say thank you for being an actor. I have spent a very good time looking at your movies, and obviously.
I have a hard time hearing up here because of the. Go ahead, tell me. Yeah. Do you have a hard time hearing with the
Okay.
echo? I mean, even in. Yeah.
Okay. Bueno, lo que le quiero decir primeramente es que y que le quiero dar las gracias. Las gracias por mí mismo y por mi familia, por los muchos ratos que hemos pasado disfrutando de sus películas. Y bueno, aquí obviamente tengo algunas preguntas que quisiera hacerle muchas preguntas, pero un actor de su tamaño, de su talla, con su experiencia, las películas que escoge, y porque he visto obviamente actores también como usted que obviamente a través de los años nos han hecho emocionarnos por la calidad de la película que hacen, pero también he visto películas que, bueno, son realmente, pues diría malas, ¿no? En su caso, cuando usted busca una película, no sé si ha llegado al punto de decir, esa película no sirve, esa película no me gusta, y no obstante de que me ofrezcan un buen salario, una buena cantidad de dinero, las haya rechazado. ¿Cuál es realmente su, vamos, desde el punto de vista personal? ¿Usted escoge la película, ha tenido la oportunidad de rechazar películas que no le gusten?
You know, I was always a theater actor first, and I remain sort of a theater actor first. So that was where I lived. So I didn't need to do films. I mean, it was always very seductive. So I never did films for money. Not as a puritanical thing, and it's always a consideration. The amount of money they pay you is a consideration, but it was never important. So my sense of what's available to me, the only thing that has changed with time is I have a wider range of roles. We were talking about typecasting. When I was earlier in my career, I think they said, oh, he looks a certain way, or he does a certain thing, and there was always an attempt to cast you in a certain vein. That is less true now. As far as good or bad, it's always a crapshoot, you don't know. You really don't know. And I think this comes back to the director and the company you keep. I don't trust scripts, I don't trust characters, because you don't know what they will be. But I do trust being in a room with people that are serious about what they're doing or have a burning desire to make something, and they invite you to make it, and they bring out the best in you. And that's all you can ask for. It's a profession, it's an art form that has so many hands in it that you can never be sure. So really, how I choose things hasn't changed, and I'd say it's a lot about the people. And as far as the quality of films, I have the same challenges that I did when I was young. It's still difficult sometimes to find interesting things to do. And if I can't find it, I do wait until there is something that good comes. But having said that, I must say also actors need to act, and I do like to work, so I've got a little vulnerability there. So when I haven't worked for a while, maybe that colors a little bit my choices. I hope that answered your question. Okay, thanks.
Well, if you have a question, you're going to have to wave very, very exaggerated way, because we really can't see you very much. So just...
Hi, may I ask in English?
We can't see very well, and we can't hear very well. Something about the stone and being back here, or both of us are old deaf guys. but I think it's better if you do it in Spanish, and then we get the... I'm sorry, I think it's best. Yeah.
Sí,
Is
perdón,
that true for you? Yeah, Nick.
Sí, no había oído, perdón. Quería saber, ¿cuál considera... Bueno, primero, bienvenido a México. ¿Cuál considera
Thank you.
que es que ha sido su peor experiencia con una película? ¿Y cuál diría que es el papel que más ha disfrutado de interpretar?
Yes. I'm really bad with these favorites or least favorite questions. Because the very nature of what I do, really, it's necessary not to make those, have favorites. Because the second you do, I think it starts to narrow how you think. But I do have them. And particularly the least favorite, I don't dwell on it. Lessons are learned intuitively. I think I won't say what it is, but I'll characterize what it was. A young director that I thought had stuff, and then when the time you got to do it, he was very passive and he really didn't like working. He just liked moving people around. That's disappointing. That was disappointing to me because I misread who this guy was, and it was a little bit of a risk because he was a first-time director. My best experience, my favorite experiences are when there's usually a role that requires a lot of, he's looking at his watch. They get scolded for that in the debates, my favorite ones are usually when there's a lot of research to do. You have a strong director and you're transformed. You're transformed by the experience of researching the part, and sometimes when you have some sort of mask or something to not hide behind, but bring out something in you that you could never do in a role that is very close to you. Because I really believe in sometimes very strong mask, when there's something is very theatrical, you find a different language in performing that gets you away from naturalism and kind of charming your way through things and kind of easily relaxing through a scenario. I like it when you get squeezed a little bit and you get put in a place where it's a little terrifying.
Buenos días. A mí me gustó el personaje que hizo en la película del Hombre Araña, de Duende Verde. Quería preguntarle, ¿cómo fue para usted la experiencia de hacer ese personaje y además ser el padre de uno de mis actores favoritos, James Franco? Gracias.
He is handsome, isn't he? He'll get old too. No. Spider-Man was a great experience. It was a fun role. People forget because of the cartoon thing. Really, the meat of the role was not the Green Goblin character so much as the father figure. That was really fun to play because you had to be in different modes. It's high comedy, and then there's some dramatic stuff there, and to find the tone was a lot of fun. And Sam Raimi, this was a case of a big studio movie that had a personal approach. Sam Raimi really approached this like an author because he had a deep feeling for this character and a deep feeling for this Spider-Man series. Also, I like doing action stuff. One of my favorite things to do is pure action. Not just stunts, but, dancing or that's my favorite thing to do because that's where I feel the freest. It's the easiest to get in a fluid state and a very receptive state when you're in movement. So that was great. James Franco, he was great. He was a very sweet guy. He works more than I do. Does that guy sleep? No, I haven't seen him in a while, but I really enjoyed when I worked with him. And I make jokes, but he does lots of things, and he's really grown as an actor. He's an interesting guy.
But you're about to do another blockbuster, I think.
I am.
A cameo?
Not one, Nick.
Two
Two.
of them. Back to back.
Well, there's one movie called The Great Wall, and that's a movie that we shot in China. It stars Matt Damon.
No.
And it's directed by Zhang Yimou, a very good director. It's a big fantasy movie that comes out, I think, in November. And then I have a part in Justice League, which is the DC comic kind of ensemble hero movie. And then I'm really excited that with James Wan, the director of The Conjuring 1 and 2, among other things, I'm going to make this film Aquaman. I'm not Aquaman, but it looks like I'll have fun things to do in that, but I'm really looking forward to that.
You're actually in presence, not just in voice or makeup or...
No, I'm. You mean as far as physically? Yeah, I mean I'm in one of these suits that makes me look more muscular than I am, but they are all, by the way. But it's regular live action and yeah.
Por acá, buenas tardes. A mí me gustaría si nos pudiera comentar sobre dos personajes muy icónicos en su carrera, que es la sombra del vampiro y el anticristo. ¿Qué significaron en su carrera?
Shadow of the Vampire was a great character because I basically copied someone else, which is a beautiful thing to do, by the way. It's a good way to work, it's liberating, and the truth is you can never really copy. But in attempting to copy, it'll send you to a place, and it's easy to get the authority of pretending because you've got such a strong model. So my model was the real, the actor that played Nosferatu, and of course the Nosferatu film. So really, I started out from pretending, and also that was a case that I kind of touched on before, where I had a very strong mask. I was in 4 hours of makeup every day to get into the character, and like 3 hours to get out of it. So 7 hours in the makeup chair. And in that time, to see me transformed, and I look in the mirror, not only did I not see myself anymore, I didn't feel like myself. And that's always a good place to start. And so that was a great experience because I had so much stuff to play with as an actor, concrete things to play with. And then Antichrist, I just think Lars is a great filmmaker. He's really, he's very intelligent. He knows cinema. I think the prologue and the epilogue in Antichrist is I think it's great cinema. So I was proud to work with him, and he was very vulnerable and very nervous at that point, making Antichrist. And it was a beautiful situation because he needed me. No, I'm joking, sort of, but we had a good collaboration on much more minor on a film called Manderley. And when he gave me Antichrist to read just as a friend to see what I thought of it. And he wasn't even proposing it to me as an actor. But I loved it so much because he was sort of unsure about it. He was nervous about it. And I loved it so much, I said, Lars, why don't I play this? And he was like, Well, actually, I was thinking of getting the woman first and then casting the man. And also, I think he was thinking of a younger man. But he could tell that I really connected with it, and that excited him. And he had trust in me, so it was just a really great experience. Because I think the movie has many layers. It's tough for some people. I know that because of extreme violence and some kind of crazy head stuff. But I think he reaches, he reaches. Sometimes he stumbles, but in this one, I think he's pretty sure. And there's beautiful things in that movie, things that I'll remember all my life.
Just to go back for a moment to Shadow of a Vampire, you're playing there, admittedly you're copying playing, but your performance, you have a very mobile face and you use it a lot, and the performance in Shadow of a Vampire goes so far over the top, it's down the other side. Was that liberating to do?
I do have a mobile face, but I never think about it. I think, just that terms of having a makeup where you don't, I don't know, it gives permission, it gives a license for different information. You never really see your face. No one really sees their face ever in their life. They see a reflection of their face, but they never see their face. But we have ideas about what our face is. And then if we willfully change our face with makeup, get a nose, become bald, put a hump on our back, have a corset on, get long fingernails. Just me doing it now, it's easy to become a different person. So having that kind of physical mask is so helpful for an actor. At least it is for me. I hope that satisfied.
More than.
Buenas tardes. Bueno, a mí me gustaría preguntar cuál fue su experiencia cuando interpretó a Emmett Flesty en la película Far Away So Close de Wim Wenders, al igual que haber participado con tan increíble reparto. Esto.
Emmett Flesty was a character in what was sort of the sequel to Wings of Desire, a Wim Wenders movie. It was Wim's film. It was called Far Away So Close. And Emmett Flesty was kind of a strange, magical character. He wasn't a real person. And he sort of spoke in riddles. The name Emmett Flesty is one small contribution. I was trying to find somehow to get into this character, and we didn't know what his name was yet, because on the page he was time itself. And I thought, Vim, we can't be calling him time itself. And then I worked out that if we flipped the letters of his name, we could have a quasi-plausible first name and last name. So he became Emmett Flesty. And that was my biggest contribution into the movie. Comes from Wings of Desire. It was at a very important time in Germany because it was right after the wall went down. So there was all this new energy and all this hopefulness and all this kind of looking back and looking forward, and different people that were usually separated were coming together. And it had that feeling. So it was thrilling to shoot in Berlin at that time. And Wim, he's a very poetic soul and a great filmmaker. So I was very happy to be in his company. And he also knows how to make a film in a kind of not crazy budget way, but he gets the resource, or at least in those days, he certainly got the resources he needed and never shied away from some big kind of extraordinary set pieces. Sorry, I don't have this together.
Buenas tardes. Primero que nada, lo amo y amo a los personajes que he interpretado en el cine. Y hablando personalmente, ¿cuál es la experiencia más bonita o grata que se ha llevado en esta visita a Morelia?
probably the true answer is too personal. So let's go with the second best answer. I'd say the screening of my wife's film, because I was very happy. This film was Padre, and I'm not just placing an advertisement. Good, and what was interesting is this story of Padre deals with a woman that's lost her father. He's died. And she's in a mourning process, and he contacts her through music from the other dimension. And of course, we made it in a very homemade way. It's a very personal film for Jada. She wrote it, she stars in it. Jada's my wife. And this was the first place we showed it. It's it was the world premiere here at Morelia. And you never know how something's going to fly, and I don't want to overstate the reception, but the people felt very present in the room, and there was a Q&A afterwards where people spoke in the language about the film that showed great interest in the themes. And I loved it so much because I thought, oh my God, this is a great film for a Mexican public. Mexican people have a connection to this because culturally, I mean, I've been told, let's say, and I have some sense of it, culturally, Mexican people have a different relationship to death than like some Europeans do, or certainly different than some North Americans do. So it really gave them easy access to some of the themes of this movie. And I think they enjoyed it particularly here. I don't know what the future of the movie will be, but it was a beautiful screening. That I will remember always.
Bueno, pues primero que nada, bienvenido a Michoacán. Mi nombre es Alonso.
Thanks.
Tal vez me voy a salir un poco del contexto de las preguntas que están haciendo, pero creo que es un tema que nos incumbe a todos los michoacanos. En el tiempo que estuvo aquí en Michoacán, en las partes que visitó, realmente se sintió seguro. Alguna vez estuvo como con miedo de que le pudiera pasar algo por el tema de inseguridad que se vive aquí en Michoacán.
That wasn't my experience, but I'm here as a guest, so the festival is taking care of me. So, and also they've made a schedule for me of being at screenings and things like that. So I'm always have someone with me, but it doesn't feel dangerous. You know, because you live here, but really from an outsider, and I'm saying that I can't truly tell because I'm always taken care of. I'm a guest, and with great hospitality. But I will say that I've lived in New York City for many years, even in the days where it was very rough. Last year shot for 4 months in Sao Paulo. That felt rough. That felt scary. I didn't feel safe there. No, it's true. Rio, I feel fine in. Here, I feel fine. Yeah. I don't feel that danger. Do you?
I would like to answer that question as well, because I'm not from Mexico. My daughter lives here. Whenever I say my daughter lives in Mexico City, people say, "Oh God, aren't you scared for her?" And I say, no, I feel safer here in Mexico than I do on the streets of Brighton, London, any big city in the UK at night. I always felt very welcome and very safe.
Buenas tardes. Antes que nada, es un honor tenerlo aquí en Morelia. Mi pregunta es, ¿cuál cree usted que son los atributos de un buen actor y qué consejos le podría dar a los actores jóvenes?
There are all kinds of actors, so the attributes of a good actor, I can only say for me what's important, because there are all kinds of actors. I think flexibility is important, patience is important, and flexibility, patience. I think it's a lifetime to work on those two, but there are others. And there was a second part? Sorry, I got to get this together. I've been asked this question before, and I don't know, except for I've tried to think about it. And once again, I can only talk about my experience because I get self-conscious or I don't trust giving advice. But in my experience, people have to, I believe in apprenticeship, I believe in going towards people and situations that stimulate you. And you don't even ask where they're going. Of late, I'm very obsessed with this question, this phrase, if you're not happy now, you never will be. In a similar way, if you aren't engaged now, you never will be. So for an actor, whether they're practicing, whether they're delivering coffee, whether they're performing, whether they're celebrated, whether they can't get a job, you know, they always have to find a way to stay engaged, and whatever that takes. And don't worry about the other stuff. It'll take care of itself.
Hola. ¿Nos puede dar más detalles sobre la película que quiere filmar con el director australiano aquí en México?
You know, I did press the other day, and I kind of got scolded for saying too much. So, out of kind of my director's request. No, it's not that mysterious. I gave you a lot of information, actually. You know where we're shooting. You know who we are. I will say, it's a contemporary story. You know, it's not a comic book movie. I can say that. Sorry. I don't want to get in trouble with him even before I start.
Hola. Hola, buenas tardes. Usted mencionó anteriormente que su carrera inició al principio en teatro, que era un actor de teatro y después pasó a cine. Y me llama la atención eso porque, bueno, perdón, estoy nerviosa. Bueno, mi pregunta es si usted cree, yo veo que se la pasa muy bien en sus películas, lo disfruta mucho y me alegro por eso. Quisiera preguntarle cómo es su experiencia en teatro. ¿Lo extraña, le gusta, lo ama? ¿Cómo se siente en teatro?
I still do theater. I'm performing all the time. But unless, you know, you really follow theater, you're not going to know about it. Or unless I'm not performing in your town, you're not going to know about it. The movie stuff totally eclipses people's perception of what I do. In the past couple of years, I've performed a lot in the theater. Not in Mexico, but in South America, Asia, Europe, North America. So I still do theater. Theater is, you know, you control your own rhythms. It tends to be more physical. And I love the ritual of it. I also think in this technological age where you go to a restaurant and everybody's not talking to each other and they're looking at their iPhones and they're living in a world that they create and they're only going where they want to go and they're never having their feet held to the fire or given anything that they don't want or having to deal with something that they can't control. The theater is important because that meeting of telling stories and in a human frame with people close by is important. I get energized by that. But even more than that, because the audience is an energy, but it's a little abstract. Internally, I like the fact of waking up in the morning and know that evening I'm going to perform in a show, and my whole day is going to lead up to that, and it's going to color or inform what is going to be that performance tonight. Even though I will have a structure, and I will have a score, and I will have some idea of what will happen, it will always be different. Even if I tried to keep it the same, it'll be different. And that's a beautiful thing. And if you can kind of capture that kind of mixed focus of honoring a structure but also being receptive, that's a good thing to learn, not only for performing but also for life.
Muchas gracias.
One last thing that I want to say, and maybe it's not important, and maybe it's too prideful or something, but the theater I do is not the traditional theater, literature-based psychology, fourth wall theater. My background is really more a cut and paste or physical theater that values actions and events and colors and light and sound and the things that are really great about theater, rather than what is usually dominated the theater, and that is literature and psychology. Of course that's used, but it's not what pulls us by the nose.
¿Qué tal? Buenas tardes. Quisiera preguntar sobre la película La Última Tentación de Cristo. Tengo entendido que fue censurada en algunos países en el año en que se debió haber exhibido, bueno, que salió, se estrenó. ¿Qué opinas de la censura? ¿Has sido censurado en algunas otras películas? Que nos contaras un poco de la experiencia de que una película no se exhiba en el momento en que debe de exhibirse, ¿no? Y si ahora con las nuevas posibilidades de la tecnología, ¿crees que le suceda esto a otros filmes? Me gustaría saber tu opinión.
Last Temptation was censored, and it was a film that I really thought was strong, so it made me feel bad. You make something that you think is beautiful or has something interesting, you want to share it. So when that's blocked, it's disappointing. Yes, I've been censored a lot in the theater, by the way. The theater that I was doing got censored a lot. I don't know. Of course it's horrible. Things, I don't know. There's all kinds of